You've built your product. You've pitched the dream. The grind is constant, the hours long, and even the weekends feel like war zones. Yet at 2 a.m., staring at your ceiling or your glowing laptop screen, a deeper question haunts you. What's the point of this? Am I building something or becoming something I never intended to be? Now picture this. You're sitting across from an ancient Roman, Seneca, a man who advised emperors amassed a fortune and still wrote about simplicity, virtue, and peace. He looks you in the eye and says, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." If Seneca were your co-founder, your mentor, your board advisor, what would he say about this startup journey of yours? That's what we're exploring. Seneca believed that drifting without intention was the greatest tragedy of a human life. He saw people chasing many things, but mastering none. In today's terms, he'd look at your cluttered Asana board, your never-ending pitch decks, your shifting roadmap, and say, "You're not busy, you're scattered." For Seneca, the real work begins when we choose a direction, not just a to-do list. Focus wasn't about hustle. It was about honoring your own time. In business, this translates to clarity. You don't need to do everything. You need to do what aligns with your values and your mission. That's the harbor you sail toward. Everything else is just wind. And yet, in our age of constant notifications and shallow dopamine hits, we're pulled in every direction. Most founders confuse momentum with progress. But Seneca would remind you, if you don't know where you're going, any movement feels like progress. What if your biggest productivity hack wasn't another app or technique, but the philosophical courage to say no? Startups live in the shadow of uncertainty. There's no guarantee your product will land, your funding will close, or your team will stay intact. Seneca didn't have a word for startups, but he had plenty to say about living in a volatile world. He knew that our suffering often comes not from events themselves, but from our anticipation of them. Most of the fear you feel before a launch, a pitch, or a downturn is fear you've created in your mind. The Stoics understood that the world outside us can't be controlled, but our response always can. Seneca trained his mind for chaos. He'd imagine loss, failure, death, not to wallow in them, but to build psychological muscle. When the worst didn't come, he felt gratitude. And when it did, he was ready. So the next time you're dreading the unknown, remember this. The Stoic doesn't demand certainty. They prepare for the storm and then step into it calmly. How much of your anxiety is really just poor philosophical training? Success is intoxicating. Praise is addictive. In the startup world, when headlines start to hit and valuations climb, it's easy to believe the myth that you alone made this happen, that you are the visionary, the outlier, the genius. Seneca would have smiled, then warned you. He had wealth, fame, and power, but he never trusted them. He knew that ego was the soft poison that rots a soul from within. The Stoic doesn't reject success, but he refuses to be owned by it. Founders often fall into this trap. They begin with service, with purpose. But along the way, they start chasing recognition. The startup becomes less about solving a problem and more about proving their worth. When that shift happens, burnout is inevitable. Seneca practiced humility, even at the height of his influence. He constantly reminded himself that fortune is fickle and that the applause of others is a poor substitute for inner peace. So ask yourself, if the praise stopped tomorrow, would your purpose still stand? Risk is the currency of entrepreneurship. You take it when you quit your job, when you launch something new, when you speak truth to an investor who wants to change your vision. But what's often overlooked is the difference between boldness and recklessness. Seneca understood this distinction. He saw courage not as blind action, but as reasoned daring. To him, the brave man was the one who accepted fate, looked it in the eye, and acted with principle, not impulse. In today's landscape, we glorify the founder who bets it all. But Stoicism asks a different question. Are you risking the right things? Is the risk rooted in mission, or is it a performance for admiration? Would you still take the leap if no one ever heard about it? True Stoic courage is quiet. It builds, it persists, and it doesn't depend on headlines. This might be the hardest lesson of all. You do everything right. You build with intention. You stay focused, prepare for setbacks, silence your ego, and take brave, thoughtful risks. And yet, the market says no. The product flops, the investor passes, the dream dies. Seneca would nod. He'd say, yes, that can happen, and it's okay. The Stoic separates effort from outcome. You are not entitled to success. You are only responsible for how you show up each day. For the founder, this detachment is radical. We're taught to tie our identity to results, but that's a trap. You can do everything with excellence and still fail, or worse, succeed and still feel hollow. Freedom begins when you stop needing the outcome to justify the journey. That doesn't mean giving up on growth. It means you anchor your sense of worth in character, not metrics. That's Stoic sovereignty, and no downturn can take it from you. Seneca once said, "No man was ever wise by chance." You won't become a Stoic founder by accident, but you can become one by choice. In a world obsessed with speed, be the one who acts with intention. In a space driven by ego, be the one who leads with humility. In a culture that worships results, be the one who finds peace in the process. You can build something great without losing yourself. In fact, that might be the only way to build something that truly lasts. And maybe, just maybe, Seneca would have invested in you